Volkswagen Golf Mark 6 is one of the most overlooked cars within the entire Golf range, despite it receiving great praise and selling really well back in the day. They look good, they drive great, they're practical, and they will last forever. Now these cars are becoming a kind of good budget daily driver or first car for some people, so I've decided to make a video on why you should buy one. So let's get started. Please remember to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel out, especially if you like, and share the video with your friends and because they might like it too. Starting off with the selection of different engines that are available, I'm going to start off with the petrols. The first one was the 1.2 litre TSI, which produced only 85 brake horsepower. But there was also a turbocharged version of this engine, which produced 105 horsepower, and it came with a 6-speed manual gearbox. We also got a 1.4 litre petrol engine, which again was naturally aspirated, and it produced the same amount of power as the 1.2 litre engine. And there was also a turbocharged version of this car, and it produced 122 brake horsepower. A very likeable engine, I believe. And there was also a twin-charged version, which produced 160 brake horsepower. It is believed this engine was a slightly detuned version of the engine found in a Polo GTI or the Skoda Fabia VRS at the time. And finally we have the 2 litre TSI engines, which were in two different flavours. One was the GTI engine, which produced 210 horsepower, and of course there was a second one that was in the Golf R, which produced 270 horsepower. Moving on to the diesel, which is probably the engine you're going to buy. There was a choice of two different engines, but they all came in different tunes. The first one was the 1.6 TDI engine, with the least powerful one producing 90 brake horsepower. Meanwhile other versions, including the one that my car has, produced 105 brake horsepower. And the second engine was the 2 litre TDI engine, which produced between 140 brake horsepower or 170 brake horsepower. The latter was saved for a GTD model. Now moving on to the trim levels. I think it's quite important that you know these just so you know the difference between a low spec car and a high spec car. The Mark 6 Golf had a selection of different trim levels. So starting off that list was the S, which was the entry level. This was I think only for the petrol versions, I'm not 100% sure though. It was basically the essentials. Then there was the Blue Motions, which had a different design front bumper compared to the usual S and Match Golfs at the time. More on that front bumper later, as it was later used in the R line as well. The Blue Motion didn't have alloy wheels as standard either, but most of them did come in alloys. They also had blue accents in the interior as well. Then there was the Match, which was a very common level. You got the mid-range radio. You also got some higher end interior pieces, and the seats were fitted with a better fabric or leather if you were fancy. Some of the interior pieces were chromed as well, so they just gave a lot more premium look. But the most premium feature was definitely the multifunctional steering wheel, which had a selection of different buttons and you can control different things in the car. Then there was the Highline, which would have had even more optional extras installed on it. There's also the GT as well, which was a similar type of spec level. The Highlines also came with like a fabric / Alcantara seats, which look absolutely amazing and also very well bolstered, so they're quite sporty feeling. And then there was the R line trim level as well, which contained most of the options, and as standard it had the Highline interior, but you could have opted for the R line interior instead. And then of course we have the GTI, GTD and Golf R. The GTD and GTI is basically the same interior, except the tartan was in like a different colour on the GTDs, and the Golf R basically got all the goodies that were available at the time. You can tell like the different spec levels of each Golf. One telltale sign is whether they have fog lights or not. The ones that don't have fog lights were usually the entry level ones, however the ones that did were kind of the higher end ones. If your Mark 6 doesn't have fog lights though and you would like them, you can easily install them. Just go online and follow a tutorial. Back to the R line now. This is a very rare type of model. It did have the same front bumper as the Blue Motion, as I explained, with the fog lights as standard. You also got the same side skirts as the Golf R, and the rear bumper design was the same as the Golf R as well, except the rear diffuser was different. The two exhausts were in the middle, and it was also a different type of design as well. If you're looking at a Mark 6, this is the one I'd recommend because I think they're pretty cool cars, and they look great from the factory. So if you're planning on changing your bumpers and stuff like that, you won't need to, because I think the R line is a pretty sick looking car. Anyway, moving on to practicality, and like every Golf before it and every Golf after it, the Mark 6 is incredibly practical. The door bins in the drivers and passengers' doors are absolutely humongous. You can fit almost anything in here. You put bottles of water in there, headphones, and you even get a sunglasses holder on the fancier Mark 6 trim levels. As for the back, as my car is a 3-door model, getting in and out of it is actually very easy compared to other 2- and 3-door cars. Like, you don't feel too claustrophobic. Door bins are still very big, seats are very comfortable, and the middle seat can be folded down into an armrest, and even a ski chute. As for boot space, you have 350 litres to play with. However, if you fold the seats down, which is possible in this car like I mentioned earlier, that will go up to 1,305 litres. So if you need something that's a little practical, and something that can carry the usual shopping, golf clubs, your mum, bikes, guns, a nuclear warhead, and other essentials, the Mark 6 could be the car for you. But if you feel it isn't practical enough, you could always just get the estate version. Now moving on to the part that you're probably most interested in. The aftermarket scene, just like every other Golf before it and every other Golf after it, is no different. The aftermarket scene for the Mark 6 is absolutely huge, especially in the UK, Ireland and the US. And best of all, as is a Golf, you can usually just swap the bumpers from the fancier Golfs onto the other ones. Now, with this in mind, my car in particular has a few cosmetic mods done to it, which I would definitely recommend. I have these like carbon fibre style mirror caps in the car. Some of you might not like them, but I think they're pretty cool. I've also got the LED dynamic indicator light switches as well, which I think look pretty cool. They're about 30 quid off Amazon. You can buy fancy Osram ones, but they're like €150 and I wouldn't bother with that. And a very common mod would particularly be the V-Land taillights. I know Hella have created the OEM ones, and there's Supernova based in Australia, they do them as well. It's like the Golf GTI, Golf R style taillights, and they slide across. They're very cool taillights, I may consider them in the future. Now, putting all the exterior stuff aside, let's move on to the interior mods I did. Like I mentioned earlier, I did put LED lights in this car, which I think was a pretty cool mod, but I got rid of the mid stereo that was in the car already, and I swapped it out for a Sony Android Auto and Apple CarPlay head unit. This head unit, although pricey, is absolutely amazing. I will admit the touchscreen could be a little bit better, but at the same time, I can control songs and the volume and answer phone calls on my steering wheel, so it doesn't make it useless anymore. You can add a reversing camera to it, and like I said earlier, you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Now let's talk about performance. You can do countless mods to most of the Golf's engines that are available, some being a bit more easily tuned than others. As for the 1.6 TDI that I have, Stage 1 remap will get you to about 140 or 150 brake horsepower. A hybrid turbo, you could push maybe 180, and if you upgrade the fuel injectors, you're looking at 220 to 230, and that's only on the 1.6. I could list them all, but I would be here all day. Now let's move on to the part that no one wants to talk about. I'm sad to report that the Mark 6 has a few issues. Although since I've owned the car has been relatively reliable, I have experienced the usual wear and tear issues that you would usually expect from an old car. I know the timing chain is an important problem with the 1.4 litre, and this can completely destroy the engine. Another issue was found with the 1.6 TDI engine, and that is the fuel injectors, which unfortunately are made out of chocolate. Volkswagen screwed this up so badly that they ended up having to replace injectors for Golf owners every few thousand miles, or something like that. However, that time has ran out, unfortunately. However, there are a few other issues that now they won't exactly make the car undrivable, but they will make the driving experience unpleasant. And similar to the Mark 5, ball bearings are an issue with the Mark 6 Golf. And the rear brake calipers like to seize and fail as well. This is partially because I think there's like a hill lock assist, which is a feature on the Mark 6 Golf, but you can't disable it. So every time you fall on the smallest bit of an incline, the handbrake will automatically activate itself so the car doesn't roll. So obviously the rear brakes get worn out a lot quicker as a result. Now let's move on to the community. I know it's quite similar to like the aftermarket one I did, but just like every other Golf before it, there's a massive community. Facebook groups, websites, forums, subreddits, the whole lot. The guys are really helpful as well, and if you respect their builds, they will respect yours. Whether you just have a random Mark 6 and you just need an issue with something, or you plan on making a 600 horsepower GTI or whatever, people are going to be there to help. They can recommend you what kind of mods to get, they can recommend you what kind of fuel to use and where to get proper tune done. It's all there really. honestly am very impressed with the Mark 6 community. However, saying this, mainly farming based Mark 6 owners who just got their license will usually bastardize Mark 6 Golf, modifying it poorly, making it really low and really loud. It generally just makes the golf community look really bad, so yeah, don't do that. Now let's move on to how the Mark 6 Golf drives. It is an incredibly solid car and it really has the best of both worlds. I have an R-Line and so it would have the sport suspension, but it's still really comfortable to drive. You can be really calm and easy on like a motorway, or you can go to like a twisty roads and the car is very confidence inspiring. Sure, it's not that fast, but it allows you to have fun without getting into any trouble, so that is a very good thing, especially if you're buying your first car anyway. The clutch obviously is very forgiving as well, and it's also, the steering's very light and precise. It's perfect, like the turning circle's okay, so like it's very good for like teaching people how to drive, but also very good if you want to go for a nice spin. Like it's honestly brilliant, like it's not a load of cars come close to it. As for fuel economy, I get between 49 to 51 mpg, which is about 880 to 900 kilometers per tank. That usually lasts me about a month. There are also other alternatives as well. I think the Mark 7 could be considered another alternative as well, if the budget allows. The Mark 3 Ford Focus, those cars are going for really good deals at the moment. However, the 1 litre EcoBoost has a habit of blowing up, so I would avoid that one. You can also get the Audi A3, they're a bit more premium, and that's if you're a bit of a badge snob. And if you're not a badge snob, then a Skoda Octavia or a Fabia or a Seat Leon could be good picks as well, as they're based on the Golf and the Polo. There are hundreds of different alternatives out there, so let me know which ones you like down below. Now, the final verdict. So what is my final verdict for the Mark 6 Golf? The car is absolutely fabulous. Despite its mechanical issues, I still like the car. It hasn't left me stranded, it hasn't screwed me over really, even if it means I'm a little bit poor after like a month or so with repairs. I feel I actually enjoy the car more now than when I did. The car is cheerful to drive, it's cheerful on diesel, and it's again one of the best looking generations of Golfs, and I particularly like my one because it's very rare looking. Like, you don't see blue graphite 3-door Mark 6 Golf R-Lines anywhere. I know one of you guys own one, which is very similar, but other than that, I honestly would recommend getting a Mark 6 Golf. I know I'm a bit biased, but at the same time, if you want a cheap run around daily, which will definitely hold its value on the other end, look no further. If age is an issue and your budget can allow for it, I would definitely get a Mark 7, as you can definitely get newer ones. As for the Mark 3 Focus that I mentioned, I think you can get more recent models for about the same price as Mark 6, so that could be another good option as well. So other than the usual wear and tear bits, a Mark 6 Golf, or indeed any other Volkswagen, will be reliable. It will help you. It's perfect at almost everything. And if you're looking into it, I'd say go for it. So that is all from me today. I hope you guys really enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. Do you have a Mark 6? Are you thinking of getting one? Let me know down in the comments below. And please remember to like, share and subscribe. Anyway guys, that's it from me for now. I hope to see you all very soon.